Hello everyone. In this video, I am going to show you how to migrate virtual machine from one cluster to another cluster in Nutanix environment. So before creating the migration process, we need to know the three things. So source cluster virtual IP and destination cluster virtual IP and the source cluster VLAN and the destination cluster VLAN and then source cluster storage and the destination cluster storage. So these three things before migration or sorry before creating the remote site we need to decide. So what is remote site? If you want to migrate one VM to another cluster, we need to create like path, source to destination and then destination to source. So like that we need to create two remote site and then we can create a protection domain async dr so that we can migrate the VM. So first step, we need to collect the cluster virtual IP. Just go to setting and then select cluster detail. So our cluster 2 virtual IP is 72 ending with 72. So cluster 1 virtual IP is 62. So now go to cluster 1, go to protection domain, create remote site. So I know the VLAN and the storage. So that is the reason I did not show you. But in like real-time environment, we have multiple clusters. So we need to decide from where to where we are going to migrate. For that, before that, we need to know the all the details. So this is like a remote site name. We are creating path from cluster 1 to cluster 2. So I'm creating the remote site name CL1 to TL2. So this is a DR 92 168 100.72. This is a cluster 2 virtual IP add site. So in next step, it will ask you from which cluster network, like click OK and then storage default container, click save. So now we created Nutanix cluster 1 to cluster 2, that remote site. So now we created connection between cluster 1 to cluster 2. So just go to cluster 2, create remote site, physical cluster and then NTX cluster 2 to cluster 1. So cluster 1 virtual IP is 62. Add site. So select the VLAN and the storage. Click save. So now we have created remote site in the both the cluster. Just go to cluster 1 because from cluster 1 we are going to migrate the VM. So there only we need to create a protection domain. Async dr. So VM migration from PL1 to PL2. Create. So select the virtual machine, which machine you want to migrate. So click next. So for example, if you want to schedule, we can create schedule, but I am going to migrate right now, so I am not going to do any schedule here. Click close. So now we have created like a protection domain. We are going to, so under this protection domain we have one entity, that is the Win10 CL1 machine. Go to entity here. So here you can see under entity Win10 cluster 1. Okay, now go to this protection domain async dr. So select migrate. So it will ask you to select the remote site where you want to migrate it. So once you select and then if you confirm migrate statement, it will migrate to cluster 2. So select the remote site where we want to migrate the VM and then confirm migrate. So VM migration has been started. So it will take some time to migrate the VM from cluster 1 to cluster 2. So once the migration has initiated, we can see the status here from cluster 1 under replication under protection domain. If you select the protection domain here, you can see the multiple tab. Under replication, you can see outgoing. It means this Win10 virtual VM is migrating to the cluster 2. The same thing you can see under it will show like a incoming, but I think it's completed, I guess. We go to VM. So not yet, still it will take some more time. Also, as part of this migration, it will take local snapshot and then it will keep it in the remote also. So just go to local snapshot. Here you can see, right? So local snapshot has taken and it's processing. Also remote snapshot it's taken. So it means the migration activity is going on. So let's see after completing this process, we can see the virtual machine in cluster 2. Okay, now the migration has completed. We just go to cluster 1. We can't see VM because we migrated to cluster 2. Just power on this VM, cluster 1 VM, right? And then go to protection domain. So once the migration done, we need to unprotect the VM from protection domain. Go to cluster 1. Okay, now go to cluster 2 entity unprotect. Because when we create the protection domain, that time VM in cluster 1, that's why we can see the VM under cluster 1 protection domain entity. Since we have moved to cluster 2, that's why it's added to cluster 2 protection domain entity. Now it's not added to under protection domain entity. So as part of this migration, it will create the snapshot. So once the VM powered on, up and running fine, we can delete the snapshot so that we can reclaim the space on the container. So just go to protection domain. So select the local snapshot, delete, select, delete. So local snapshot has deleted. Just go to cluster 1, select local snapshot, remove, so remove. So snapshot has been removed. Okay, so that we can reclaim the space. So VM has been powered on from cluster 2, but this VM migrated from cluster 1. So we can see 2 VM. Cluster 1, there is no VM. We have migrated to cluster 2. Thank you.